So you want to be a difference maker, somebody who's discovered and reached their true potential in life, somebody who's able to lead and impact the masses based on the individual that they are. And here's the truth, you have those capabilities within you, you just haven't really been taught how to unleash them. And at Molliteum, we're on a mission to make sure that you can do that. My name's Matt Calderoni and I'm the co-founder of Molliteum. We've helped just over 5,300 high performers like yourself be able to discover and reach their true potential in life by building the trait of resilience. And on the Difference Maker podcast, we're here to do that. All you need to do is commit. Commit to being better, commit to dominating, serving, impacting, having passion, and finding resolve in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis. And I promise you, if you commit to that and you take in the info that we're going to teach you about, the tools, the traits, the tactics, the skills, you'll be able to be a difference maker. So, welcome to the Difference Maker podcast. And if it's the first time here joining, I'm telling you, it'll change your life. How do you really reinvent yourself for the new year? How do you really become a difference maker this year? Listen, you've probably set some targets in the past before and they've been good, but they haven't gone great. And maybe you did hit those targets before in the past, but you feel like there's still more to give, almost like you're undershooting, right? It happens. And the truth is that most of us don't get taught the right ways on how to set targets for the new year. Most of us don't get taught how to properly set ourselves up for the new year coming. We often just get told to write down a bunch of targets without having a big picture vision. Well, I'm going to sit here and tell you you're not going to do that this year, especially if you're tuning into this. In this first of 4 episode series, we're going to teach you exactly what you need to do in order to take the first step in reinventing yourself. And it's not setting more targets. You've done that in the past. Before we set targets, we got to get very clear on who you want to be this year. Who do you really want to be? And not just this year, but in the big picture. 10 years from now, where do you want to be? We're going to discover that today. And it's going to be something that drastically changes the way you set your targets for the future. So, get ready. This is the first of 4 episodes in this series. I can't wait. Stay resilient. Hey everybody, it's Matt and Chris Calderoni. Welcome back to the Difference Maker podcast. We're super excited to get this series kicked off because like we mentioned the other week, we're going to be going into now a series on really how to reinvent yourself for the new year. Not just setting targets and all that kind of stuff, but a real series on like what to do, the step-by-step process, how to get there. How do you really become a difference maker this year? So we're going to get into that for the next 4 episodes from now until the new year. I'm super excited for it. Chris is excited for it. Chris, what's going on?
Well, you know, it really is just getting clarity on all of this stuff, right? Like when you're clear on what you have to do, it's just that much easier to take those steps to go to where you want to go. So,
yeah.
Like again, what Matt said, 4 episodes, and it's about, I think, getting clear and getting prepared.
Yeah, essentially the last 4 episodes you will ever need going into a new year. That's how we kind of structured this and wanted to make it so we'll have to top ourselves next year. So let's get into this. So you want to be a difference maker. You want to make sure that you're somebody in the new year who's really able to set the standard, set the tone, accomplish what you want. This goes way deeper than just setting targets. And, you know, over the next 4 sessions, we're going to go into target setting in one of them, but we have to start with identity first. And the reason we do is because of the following. The way you identify is how you're going to perceive situations or see situations, and it's going to be how you react in certain situations, and how you get results in situations. Where a lot of people make the mistake, and where you might have found yourself maybe for the last couple years not really accomplishing what you've wanted or what you've had to do or so on, is because maybe that you've known what to do, but you haven't really had that identity that's held you in place to keep doing it, right? Like think about this for a second. If you identify as one of the best in the world at what you do versus an average individual, you're going to follow through on your actions differently. You're going to see situations differently. You're going to get different results than just that average individual, right? You're going to push more. You're going to try things differently. You're going to risk things more. You're going to push, right? So the point is we have to start with identity for that reason. But secondly, and most importantly, your identity is your vision, right? And where we see a lot of people kind of, you know, we'll say make poor choices coming into setting targets is because they're in reaction mode. They're in a mode where they're not setting targets based on the big picture. They're kind of just setting targets for where they're currently at. And although that's important, you really want to be able to look at this and say, okay, this is the type of life I want to live. This is the way I want to be. This is what I want to accomplish in my sport or my business. Now I need to work backwards. I need to look 10 years into the future and work backwards to connect the dots so that I'm able to really get that done.
And like, to be honest with you, I don't even think it's just about that setting targets, it's also like the daily actions.
Yes.
When you have that certain identity, like you're not going into a day where it's like, oh, I'm feeling unconfident, this, that, or whatever. Like you actually know what you're about. And it just keeps you on, in my opinion, with some of even the guys that I work with, it keeps you like honest, keeps you accountable. And it's
Yeah.
like daily actions. Like you don't need to have these like massive
Lists.
targets or goals or
Yeah.
anything that you want to hit. Like if you're just fine with like, having confidence in your day-to-day actions, this is something that is important to understand. Like how you choose to present yourself to the world is something important.
Yes, absolutely. And that's why we were going to say too, before continuing any further in this podcast, please make sure to pause right now. Go get a notebook, go get some paper, go get something to write this down. It's super important because this is where you're really going to start doing some transformational work. Like Chris and I were talking about this. Tis the season to give, right? And this is where we want to make sure that you have something to walk away with that you know is going to work. It's hardcore on paper, if you will. You can actually write it, see it, touch it, feel it. This works. So please, if you haven't yet, pause this episode right now. Go get yourself a notebook or something to write with, and we'll go from there.
And sign up to the newsletter that we have.
Absolutely.
It's going to be something that's going to help you stay accountable on a weekly basis. It comes out every Monday, an email. It's just something quick, something that you can add on to, your daily life. So
100%. So let's dive into it. So we start with identity because like Chris and I were saying, it starts with vision. It's about who you want to become. And then Chris was talking about daily habits. And this is important too, really quick to touch on. One of the strongest, we'll call it forces in human nature, is to really start an individual's need to reflect who they believe they are, right? And there's been studies on this with people who are quitting smoking versus those who aren't. This is a common example we go back to. Those who I started identifying right away as some of the fittest individuals in the world versus another group who's identifying as just people who are quitting smoking. Those who identified as I'm a smoker who's just quitting actually got back to the habit within about 10 days versus those who felt the need to reflect this fit individual and actually kick the habit past that 10-day mark, right? So identity is everything, right? And the story you tell yourself that you're constantly growing up with, that you're constantly looking at, that you're constantly paying attention to is often the one that comes true. And the problem that we notice with a lot of people is that their identity is not on track. And before their identity is not on track, then they're trying to go set targets. And it's like, that's a tough game to play because self-sabotage is very high, right? I'm sure if you're somebody who's tuning into this episode and didn't accomplish everything they wanted this past year, maybe you're somebody who knew what to do, but you just didn't do it. Your identity is usually at the root of that.
And to be honest, like just as a precursor to everything, this identity shift, it's not something that it's going to be perfect and it's going to be easy at the beginning. Like you're going against the habits that you've currently built or the identity that you currently have. And whether it's been ingrained in you for years or it's just something that you picked up, like an identity shift from our experience anyways, it takes a little bit.
It takes a bit.
Like you do not need to be perfect in the first week. It's just, okay, let's hit 3 out of 7 days this first week on just even staying accountable to your daily actions when we eventually break it down. But it's just like people start it and then they stop very quickly. And it's because like it is difficult. And I think just accepting that from the beginning and just understanding that I've said this many times, but it's not an Amazon next day delivery. Like it's going to take weeks. And even after that, it's going to hit that much more when you look back on it. And it's like, wow, I actually changed something. You know?
100%. And the thing is that I was going to say about that too is like, let's talk really quickly about why that happens, why it's so tough sometimes to make that change. And it's a great segue into this, but like, this is the crazy stat that you got to pay attention to. Only 5% of our life, or our day-to-day, I should say, is lived consciously. Isn't that crazy, right? Like, I don't mean like that you're alive. I mean that you're consciously making choices of what you do in front of you. 95% of the time, you are actually subconsciously living, aka you're on autopilot with all these things in you called habits, right?
It's kind of terrifying.
It's terrifying. And the crazy thing is this, like Chris was saying, it's tough to make that identity shift. This is why, right? Because only 5% of the time, you're consciously choosing who you want to be. So that means then if we're going to do this the right way, we've actually got to understand here today, and this is why we're starting here, who you want to become and where you want to go. And then we've got to make sure you can subconsciously tune that within you. And we're going to show you how to do that today. So without further ado, let's get into this, the components of shaping your identity. So here's how simple it is to change your identity, to change who you want to become. Again, very simple. It's just tough to do in practicality, right? So the simple process, one summary on how to change identity is choose who you want to be and then select a bunch of behaviors that reflect that and take action on those behaviors. That's it, right? That's changing your identity. You want to become somebody who is more fit and that's your new identity shift? Great. Then that means that you need to have behaviors then that reflect being a fit individual. And you could have been a very overweight, unhealthy individual for the longest time. If that's the case, no problem. You can change your identity in an instant and then you'll see that those results take a little bit to take action and to take course into, I should say, but that's okay. All that matters is that you're starting to reflect that through your behaviors. So it's a very simple process we're going to do today. Choose who you want to be, then choose the behaviors to follow with that. Does that all make sense? Everybody makes sense, right? Good.
It makes sense, yeah. And I would even just say, like, take some actual time to think about it.
Yes.
You know,
Absolutely.
things don't have to be like have these huge reasons behind it.
No.
Like, it could be something super simple. It could be something that's meaningful to you, but like actually take the time to think about it. That's the hard part at the beginning.
100%. So let's talk about the 3 steps we're going to take right now. And then this is where you're going to start doing some writing in the next bit. So if you haven't, again, please, one more call for this. Pause, go get a notebook, something to write down. This is where the transformation is going to happen. So 3 components we're going to talk about right now. Number 1, if you're going to shape your identity and reshape it and innovate it, you need to have a vision of who you want to be in life. We're going to do that first. Secondly, then, we're going to raise your standards to set a new level of expectations for yourself. And then finally, we're going to put yourself into a resilient state each day with the right kinds of systems, aka habits, to help you start reflecting this individual. We're going to go through all 3 of those today. Does that make sense? Simple stuff. Yes. Good. Okay. So let's start with vision. So what is vision? Vision is simply just understanding the big picture of who you want to become. Okay? Who you want to be in life. Who do you want to... In a picture perfect world, who would you be? Because here's the thing. A lot of us think that, you know, in this world that it's the world that shapes us and we don't shape ourselves. But the truth of the matter is this. So that 95% subconscious, right? Let's hit on that for a sec. Where do those subconscious kind of programming, where does that all come from? Well, the truth is that between the ages of 0 to 7 years old, you actually are operating your brain in a state called theta. Okay, in a brainwave called theta. In this state, you're actually getting hypnotized by the environment around you. So what does that mean? I'm not talking about somebody standing there waving the thing in front of your face, right? I mean that you're observing everything going on around you, and you're looking at it and you're understanding it, and you're saying to yourself, well, you know what? I saw person A reflect a behavior towards certain person B, and that got them a certain result. And now all of a sudden, if I want to live in this environment and these rules that are around me, I have to start abiding by that. Right? So when you have that understanding of, oh, okay, you know what? Mom and dad acted this way, which means I need to act that way. Mom and dad believed in this, which means I need to believe in that. My grandparents told me about this, so I need to believe in that too. That's the one way that subconscious programming happens. The other way that subconscious programming happens after the ages of 0 to 7 years old is that you're actually getting repetition, right? So what you constantly see and repeat to yourself. So that's why the story you tell yourself is so powerful, the one that comes true. If you're constantly telling yourself, oh, things just never work out for me. They never work out. They never work out. I always get the short end of the stick. You're probably going to subconsciously tune yourself to get the short end of the stick.
And that's one of the most difficult things to break, actually.
Absolutely.
That pattern. You know?
So the reason we start with vision and a conscious vision of who you want to become is so that then going on further in this episode, we're going to teach you how to subconsciously tune it. But you need to start with understanding who you want to be without constraints, without anything, because the truth is it's not a matter that success is external. Success is it's a very internal thing, right? Like once you shift and you understand who you want to be, externally things start to happen as a result of that. Like you can call it the law of attraction or whatever you want to call it. But the truth of the matter is this. Once you know what you want and where you want to go and you commit to it, all that stuff starts coming to you based on the actions you start taking, right? We often say that, oh, it's just the law of attraction, when really you're actually taking action towards things that matter now versus before where maybe you were just randomly acting, if that makes sense, right? So we're going to start with understanding consciously who you want to be. So I'm going to say it like this, and there's 3 questions right now that I want you to answer, okay? So for each of these questions, take 5 minutes. This is going to take you about 15 minutes to do. So this is a big one, okay? Question number 1. In a perfect world, who do you want to be when it comes to your professional life? So your professional life for you right now could be a business professional. It could be sports if you're a younger athlete tuning in or an older one. But your professional life, that life, it's who you want to be in a business setting, in a sports setting, in an athletic setting. Who do you want to be? Okay, in a perfect world. So you're going to take 5 minutes and you're going to answer that question. The next question you're going to ask yourself then, once you've done that, who do you want to be in your personal side of life? In a perfect world. So this is where I want you to think of the things like mental, emotional, physical, your relationships, the financial life you want, the spirituality you want to have, the contribution you want to give. Because here's the thing. I want you to describe a person in the next 10 years' time of who you want to be in the next 10 years. So maybe I'm sitting here saying, well, you know what? I'm not there yet, but I want to be one of the fittest individuals on this planet. I see myself as being, looking damn good in a suit and dress clothes and whatever it might be. Like, that's a real vision to have, right? Maybe it's a vision of I want to be playing at the top level in the next 10 years and I want to be one of the best athletes at what I'm doing. That's a vision. Not I just want to score more goals. Not I just want to make $1,000. Not none of that, right? I'm talking big picture. Where do you want to be in the next 10 years? What do you want to create? Okay. And once you answer that for personal and professional, the last thing I want you to do is title your new story. What would the title of your new story be? So I say this because you need to start holding yourself accountable to a specific individual that you want to be, right? If you're really going to consciously make a shift, you have to look at this and think to yourself like, okay, how do I currently make decisions? Well, you make a decision based on what you would normally do, right? And what you would normally do all comes back to this title you have on yourself. So I define myself as a difference maker. And everything I do, from the food I eat to the time I go to sleep, to the way I do projects, to the details I pay attention to the way that I hold others accountable, it's all to make sure that I'm a difference maker and the things I create are what a difference maker would create.
And you got to remember, I think, before you do this, like you are currently making, because everyone's just making actions throughout the day, right? You are currently making those actions based off of that subconscious, the habits that you currently have or have built from before. So this will, like this title, as sometimes it's out there, but like this title will hold you accountable to that next step for you, because you're going to be, again, you're battling the subconscious, you're battling the current habits that you have. So this one title is really going to help you and it's simply asking yourself, would this person be doing this or that?
Yep. That's all it is. And I know it sounds basic, but it goes right back to the Atomic Habits book by James Clear. If you've never read it, go read it, put it on your New Year's resolution. But it's a great book. He talks about how we do things and reflect habits based on who we believe we are.
Right.
The problem is what a lot of us don't do. We don't even define who we are before we go into those habits.
Yeah.
Right? So slow down right now. So take the time right now. Again, 15 minutes. All I want you to do is write fast, and I want you to dream. I want you to say no constraints on the world. Be a kid again if you're like overthinking it. But just what do you really want to go after in the next 10 years? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be a leader of a company, of a team, of an organization? What do you want? Who do you want to be? Think about that professionally. Then tell me who you want to be in your personal life. Do you want to have a family? Maybe you're at that stage in your life, and maybe in the next 10 years you want to be living in, I don't know, the mansion in California, whatever you want. I want you to dream a little bit, because this is where we're going to start isolating throughout this entire time. But who do you want to be? Do you want to be an individual that can, invest in multiple things? Do you want to be an individual who leaves an impact on an organization? Who do you want to be? And then the last part is to title it. So before we move on to the next part, which is standards, take the time and actually do this. If you need to pause and come back, do it. But this is really the gift now that you're going to see of transformation, where you get clear on who you want to become. So once you create that vision now, assuming that you did and you paused the episode and you went and did it, let's go into standards, okay? So the next step here is you've got to raise your standards of excellence. And I'm not talking about being perfect, but here's the truth. If you want to accomplish more, be more, get more done, and so on, the next step is putting new standards behind your behaviors, right? So standards are what ultimately will guide the level of awesomeness, excellence, whatever you want to call it, behind the way that you act. The problem is, though, we often put a vision together and we don't assess our standards, right? Let me give you an example. You can want to become one of the best in the world at what you do as much as you truly desire, but if your standards are still, I eat whatever's in the fridge, or your standards are still, I practice when I have time, you're not going to become one of the best in the world.
Yeah.
Right? Instead, you need overarching guiding principles. We're going to find 3 here today that ultimately guide your behaviors. So let me give you an example for mine. I'm a difference maker, like I said, right? I've got my vision. That's way too long to say on this episode. I have my title of who I am. My standards are very simple. Standard number one, the difference maker thinks and acts big. That's it, right? I think big and I take major action. Simple. I'm not just thinking short term. I'm always thinking about the long term. Standard number two for me, if I get on a podcast episode, if I go coach somebody, if I work on a business opportunity, anything, it is to leave that situation or individual better than I found it before. That's standard number two. Standard number three, very simply put, I always make sure to do things to the best of my abilities. Even if I only have 10% of that capability, I do it to the best of my ability. Why? Because that's what a difference maker would do. So what we're going to do next is, and you're going to take 10 minutes to do this, you're going to answer two questions right now. Number one, am I currently accomplishing what I want to? List the habits behind those standards. So I want you to first understand, why are you where you are? Because I think what we often do as human beings a lot of the time, who sometimes underaccomplish, we say, oh, it's not my fault, right? And the worst thing that you could do is give up your own personal control over your own behaviors. Mm-hmm. So the first thing you need to do is look at yourself and say, okay, am I accomplishing what I want to? Take some time and answer this right now, and then list the standards behind that. For example, before I was a difference maker, I was just a coach, right? That's who I believed I was. I was a mental coach. And it's like, okay, well, that's great, but I wasn't really getting the best results I wanted. I wasn't working with the types of athletes and individuals I wanted to, or organizations. So it's like, well, what was the next step? And the next step for me was, okay, well, once I changed this standard, the reason that I was accomplishing those standards is because I didn't have habits then that backed it up. And what was responsible for that was I wasn't reaching out to the best agents in the world to ask them if I could have an opportunity to work with their players at some capacity, right? I wasn't taking the time to put myself out there in the right networks, and that's why I wasn't where I was. I wasn't taking the time to better myself every single day, and that's why I was where I was. But I could see from that, I wasn't doing what I had to, and that immediately gave me some power, because if I got myself that far with those habits and those standards, imagine how much further I can go when I actually choose them.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that, regardless of whatever situation that you're in right now, like I think what you said before, Matt, of what was it, that like taking back control of your own personal actions and things like that. Mm-hmm. I think it's important to know for people to know that there's always, let's say there are some things that you can't do simply because of the constraints on whatever, your job, your life, whatever. There's always one action that you can focus on. Mm-hmm. And if you find that one action, you focus on that one for the next little bit, dominoes will start to fall.
Yeah, that's called habit stacking.
Right?
Right, 150%. So once you understand where you currently are and why you got there, listing out the habits will tell you why you got there, right? Think of it this way, by the way. The habits are the why to your story, right? Like, why am I really here right now? If you want to know why, shed light on those habits. See those things. If you're overweight and you're not the weight you want to be and the body fat isn't at the level you want, assess what habits got you there. Well, I'm not working out every day, or I'm not sticking to my plan, or I'm not going as hard as I could in the gym, or I'm not watching my nutrition, or whatever it might be. That's fine. Right? I'm cheating before bed when I have a snack or whatever it might be. That's totally fine. But the habits will tell you the why. Okay. Once you answer that, and you take about 5 minutes to do so, go to question number 2. Question number 2 is, what are my 3 new standards? What are 3 habits I must use daily to hit this level of excellence? So what you're going to do is, for example, if I'm going to, one of my standards being think and act big on a daily basis, the habit behind that are 2 of them actually for me. Like, you can list 2 if you want, but I suggest the simpler the better. Number 1 is I had to review my vision each day. That's a major habit that I still do today, every single morning when I get up, to keep myself focused on the big picture. But number 2 is I always have to ask myself before I make a decision, is this big picture? So it can be even having a client that I'm preparing for one-on-one, right? And it's like, well, is this big picture? And if I can say yes and it will help them accomplish their vision, then yes, I'm going to have that session with them. If it's not, and it's not something that's going to move them towards that, I find a different direction to take, right? So you got to ask yourself, what are the habits behind it? So number 1, ask yourself, what are your 3 new standards that reflect that new title? Okay. So mine, like I mentioned before, rewind and listen to it. And number 2, what are 3 habits that I must use daily to reflect these levels of excellence? So you want to ask yourself based on that standard, okay, if I'm going to think and act big, like Matt said, he reviews his vision every day and he asks himself before every decision, is this big picture? If it's a yes and he does it, great. simple. So take some time right now, pause again, go do it. This is reflective work. This is setting yourself up for the new year. Okay.
And what would you
Go
say
ahead.
these standards are like? They're kind of like the lines that you color between to get to where you want to go.
Great.
You know,
That's a
like,
great analogy.
that's exactly what they are. They're kind of like the blueprint, and if you stay within the lines, like, you'll eventually get to where you want to go.
100%.
Some people color messy, some people, color within, but it's really how clean can you get it?
Yes.
And as long as you have them there, I think that's a big thing too. If you have them there, you have the clarity on what you need to do, and it's just the last part of it is just getting up and saying yes, as opposed to staying in bed and saying no, kind
Easy.
of thing.
Yep. Very, very easy. Let's go to the last part then. So you have your vision now. You know who you want to be. You've got your standards in place. You've locked that in and the habits behind them. Now we got to get you into a good state every day. So what's state? State is how you feel at a current point in time, right? We are totally a reflection, not of who we really are a lot of the times, but often the state that we're in, right? You can identify as a difference maker, but be angry, and you're going to act as an angry person.
Yeah, completely.
Right. Or you could be in a state of being a difference maker, and then you act as a difference maker. We need to make sure that second scenario happens for you, because what happens is most people create their identity, they create their habit or their standard, but they forget that they need to take control of their state every single day.
Yeah, like a perfect example of that, you're an athlete, you get hit, you get bumped, one shift, one play, and then that rush of emotion just takes over. And you go do something stupid the next play, and you don't even remember it afterwards. It's like, wow, I never do something like that.
Yeah.
And that's how important, like, the state part really is. Like,
Yeah.
as much as we're setting everything up for success right now, not in a proper state, you're coloring outside the lines.
Well, and that's again a great analogy for it. And think of some of the best in the world at what they do. Like, that they have mornings that are different than the majority, right? Like, we publicize and glorify people's morning routines now based on their status in society. And you got to realize the reason that they're at a place that they are is because of how they control their state. Like, think of for example, a Tom Brady. There's a reason Tom Brady is consistently certain in himself. And if you go look at his morning systems and routines, Tom Brady has habits and standards that he follows consistently to put him in that state of confidence every week on game day.
But that's the big thing, though. It's
Yep.
consistency and not perfection.
Yep.
Like, state is really where people kind of drop off.
Yep.
This change in the identity and stuff, because for sure, some days aren't going to go as planned. Some days aren't going to, you could be going through something at work, something at school, something at whatever, and the state changes. So this is where, if you can be consistent more often than not, it's going to put you in the right direction.
Yeah. And I think this is where too, we always say to the individuals we're working with, like, you should be working to better your confidence. That's all you should be working to better your certainty, right? Meaning to put yourself in a state of certainty. So that's really all you need to do. So the way you're going to do this is very simple. You got to make sure that there's 3 things you take care of each day to get into a state of resilience and to be this individual. Number 1, you've got to take control over your physiology, the way that you use your body, right? The way you use your body is directly impacting the way that you feel. Think about it. A person who is sad or depressed is usually slouched over and breathing slowly and, kind of, oh, woe is me mentality, right? That's the way your body language is. But versus somebody who's powerful and standing up straight with their hands on their hips and ready to rock, that's an individual who's in a powerful state. We need you in that powerful one. So you need to take some time each day to control and change your physiology. The second one, you need to take time each day to control your focus, right? What you focus on is how you feel. Think about it for a sec. If I asked you to think right now about an individual or a situation that makes you sad, a point in time that did, you're going to feel sad right away when maybe you were feeling powerful from this podcast, right? Versus me asking you to think about right now a state in time where you were feeling absolutely at your best, you're going to feel completely different. So what you decide to focus on each day is vastly important for how you decide to put yourself in a state. And the last part is the language you decide to use daily, right? Like, we talked about this subconscious tuning and programming every single day, where the reality is that, if you're using language that's repetitively telling yourself you're not good enough or that you're not the best or whatever it might be, you're really putting yourself in a negative. So this is where we're going to start subconsciously tuning yourself and training yourself. So every single day, you need to make sure that you're taking control over this state and tuning it in your your mind subconsciously, right? That way you take the consciousness that you want, that vision we have, and now you're tuning it every single day by putting it into action through your physiology, your focus, and your language. So here's what we actually did. We actually gave you a gift in this podcast where if you click the link below, we have an audio you can listen to. It's me that's speaking on this audio, and it's guiding you through how to get into state each day. You just need to go through it. It's our free gift to you. Just fill out the form and you'll get it, no problem. Okay? Completely free. Download it, get it. It'll change you. But the other thing you need to do is answer these 3 questions right now. Number 1, what time of the day can I get active or change my physiology, and how? So for me, if I'm answering this question in the morning, I change my physiology by doing some breath work, which is actually done in the morning power. I actually do the morning power that's there. And then I go make sure to get a sweat on, either running or in the gym. That's my morning power work that I do. It changes my physiology. I can go into it feeling like crap, and I come out of it, feeling amazing, okay? Number 2, you got to ask yourself, what time of the day can I consciously control my focus? What must I focus on? I'm going to give you the answers to the second one. I highly suggest every single day you review that vision that you just wrote down. That's what I do. That's what our pro athletes do. That's what our CEOs do. That's what our corporations we work with do. Everybody's paying attention to the big picture first. Why? If you do that right in the morning, you're now focusing on what you want in the day versus reacting to what the day is going to throw at you, because it will throw stuff at you. That's the reality, right? The third part to this all then is, what times of the day can I consciously control my language? What affirmations must I use? The easiest way to control your language is to use affirmations. And now that you understand, like, affirmations won't change your life, but what are they doing? If you really think about it, like we said, repetition speaks to your subconscious mind. So all this stuff that we have you doing here in this state portion, the focus part of reviewing your vision, even though it might seem pointless and you think about it every day though, it's tuning your subconscious. Affirmations. Are they going to completely change your life? Maybe. But do they usually? No. But what do? They completely change your subconscious programming. So realize what part you're talking to and realize exactly what it is that you're doing. That way you know exactly what part of the mind you're speaking with and exactly what part of the mind that you're hitting on. Otherwise, you're not going to tune the subconscious with what you consciously want to get done. So make sure what affirmations you can use. I would highly say start with an I am statement, right? I am the difference maker. I am going to be somebody who changes this planet, blah, 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 blah. Whatever it might be, start with that I am. Why? Because once you do it and you have 2 or 3 of them that you're constantly repeating to your subconscious, the things that are most important to you, you're starting to tune it now, and you're starting to kind of, in a positive way, brainwash yourself for what you want to get done. Will this finish the fight? No. Habits finish the fight. But getting yourself to focus on the things you want from now on is one of the most important things, because I know most people don't do that. So go answer those 3 questions now. And then the last part is how to use this all. So assuming that you went and answered those questions, right? Here's how you're going to use this now. Number 1, you need a daily practice every single morning, 10 minutes at least of your day. Go do the morning power. If there's one thing I'm begging you to do right now, like pause the episode and go download that morning power system. It's a simple thing to use, or audio, sorry. It's a simple audio track to use. It's a simple way to get yourself into state. We take care of it all for you. If you just do that, you're going to start getting results from all of this, okay? The other thing, though, you need to start making every decision reflect that new identity. So start questioning your decisions, right? Consciously, as much as you can remember. I'm a difference maker. Okay, well, a difference maker doesn't, eat that unhealthy piece of food that's in front of him. Instead, he's going to make the choice to eat the healthy one. A difference maker doesn't skip out on early bedtimes like he said he would. He goes and makes sure to get in bed at the right time so that he's not feeling like crap the next day. A difference maker doesn't, wing it when it comes to his weekly prep with stuff he's doing in business. He makes sure to prep each week before it even starts to be a step ahead. Like, those little things are game changers, right? And this is what we do with our pro athletes. It's what we do with our CEOs. I can't keep saying it. It all starts with a vision. Because when you do that and you review it daily, which is the last step, you have to make sure you're seeing and feeling this vision daily. Again, if you do the morning power, it's going to take care of it all for you. So again, plugging it again, please go download that below. It's free. It's a gift that we have for you. There's no attachments. Just go get the morning power. So before we wrap up, let's recap and we'll go from there. Number 1, we're starting with a vision, because your vision is where you need to know you want to go in the next 10 years before we can set any targets. Target setting is coming in the next couple weeks. Number 2, we are subconsciously tuning your mind to accomplish what you consciously want, right? Which is this vision. Most people get this wrong, where they just create a vision and they never look at it again. You need to program yourself daily. The way we do that is very simple. We raised your standards, and we're going to see those daily. And then on top of that, we're putting you into a state of resilience every single day and into this new identity by doing your morning power work. So all you need to do is make sure that every decision reflects this identity. And all you need to do is make sure that every morning you're doing your morning power. If you do those two things from this session alone, aside from the work we had you do before, you're going to be bumping and going every single day. Just take action on it. Chris, do you have anything?
The only thing with this is stay patient with yourself. Regardless of what happened in the past or whatever the case may be, you can start today and you just keep moving forward. So that'd be the only thing with the identity piece is like, just keep going and stay consistent with it.
And just remember, change happens in an instant, but the results take some time.
Yep.
So you can change who you want to be literally after this podcast. You can change in this moment. It happens, right? That moment comes down and it's like, I'm doing this. I'm changing. Just take some time to see the results. Be consistent with it. You might go to the gym tomorrow for the first time in 3 years, right? And it's like, oh my God, after that running episode that I just did or that walk or that workout, I'm not getting any bigger. And it's like, yeah, it takes some time. We know, speaking of the gym in general, right? We know neurologically it takes at least 6 weeks to strength adapt, and then you start to see the muscle differences, right? But my point is, change who you want to be right now. Take that stance, because the moment you start, you're on a path now. And it's going to take some time to see everything come through, but you'll get there. Just stay consistent with your morning daily practices. That's what our pros do. That's why they're consistent. That's why we've got NBA players who are shooting consistently from the floor. That's why we have NHL goaltenders and forwards who are consistent with their day-to-days. That's why we have CEOs who are consistently hitting what they want. The reason is not because there's some kind of cheat code. The cheat code is staying consistent with these habits.
Yeah.
That's it. So episode 1 is down. Session 1 of 4 is down. We're coming back next week. We'll be going in fully on how to remove limiting beliefs, because this is very important. And then going into it even further, we'll be getting into the target setting. But stay tuned. We're super excited. Subscribe to our newsletter. Please make sure you're getting these updates. Use the morning power below. Super important. And of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel. This is very important too. It helps us grow. Share this with anybody that you feel can use this. This is the perfect time to reinvent yourself, but we're doing it the right way. We're not just setting some targets and hopefully hitting them. We're doing a complete identity uplift. So everybody stay resilient, take care, and we'll see you all in the next one.